Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Cyber Security Recruiter podcast. I'm joined for our part two session, which is going to be good. It's going to be pretty technical. It's going to be fun. Andrew, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good, my friend. For everyone listening, joined by Andrew. He originally started off way back in 2003, Andrew McNichol, as a Geek Squad agent. He was there for 6 years. He then progressed on to systems engineer at Go Beyond IT and Evolution LCC. He was then a principal security consultant and team lead for Secure Mission Solutions and Parsons Company. Andrew was there for 5 years. He was then the co-founder and security researcher at Primal Security for just over 6.5 years. Andrew has also been a SANS instructor for over SANS mentor for over 7 years. And where we are today, Andrew is the CTO and co-founder of BreakPoint Labs. So yeah, welcome back, mate. This is the first part two we've done, so we're exclusive.
Oh, okay, there we go. I didn't realize. That's good to hear. Yeah, we just focused on so many good content last time, but we didn't touch any of the real technical stuff. So thought it'd be good to cover some of the technical aspects.
Yeah, definitely. So just for everyone that's listening, we're going to go into kind of 7 ways to take over a network. We're going to really aim to help blue and red team guys and girls today. We're going to talk about some of the real life that BBL BreakPoint Labs use on a pen test. And yeah, the aim of the show today is to get a little bit more technical and really help people listening and anyone that's obviously taking career progression seriously when it comes to red team or blue team activities. So we're really going to dive into that. Yeah, so the question from me, Andrew, is I think we'll start with exploiting ADs. I know you personally have had chats about kind of Bloodhound off air and stuff like that, but if you wouldn't mind walking me and the listeners through the methodology that you've refined, produced, improved at BreakPoint Labs when it comes to exploiting ADs, that would be a nice place to start, my friend, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah. So I think Active Directory is most networks. There's definitely some smaller networks and some smaller companies that are AD focused, maybe more Google shop. But for the most part, when you're looking at a larger enterprise, you're going to be dealing with Active Directory. And it is a very feature-rich, necessary evil when you're dealing with Microsoft infrastructure. Tons of data about the network and users and computers and permissions inside there. And it becomes a big rat's nest over time. So what I see is that an organization will stand up. They've been built the network for 20 years, let's say. And in that time, Active Directory has really grown and it's become a monster, right? It's this thing that just has rat's nest permission issues, and nobody really has a clear view about what can an attacker do. So that is where we spend a lot of time. We do our pen tests, and one of the reasons is because it is so feature rich and it gives you such a great number of findings and a number of interesting ways to gain access, escalate privileges, and ultimately achieve the mission objectives, which is generally to show risk and cause an impact, or rather how an attacker would cause an impact. Getting all that access is how. So for Active Directory, we generally will start with, it depends on the type of test. If it is a red team, we probably aren't going to go out the gates running SharpHound. But for those that don't know, Bloodhound and SharpHound probably your bread and butter tool set for Active Directory. SharpHound is data collector. Bloodhound is backend GUI with Neo4j, and it graphs the data for you and lets you just do a bunch of queries. It's a amazing tool set for both defenders and attackers, red and blue side. But if we're on a red team, super red teaming is generally you don't want to get caught and you're generally trying to achieve some sort of impact undetected, testing the defenders. We might not go out and start using SharpHound. We do have some modified versions that do things a little slowly. We may just start doing DS query or custom LDAP queries, which is effectively what SharpHound's doing, just rapid fire. But on a pen test, we're definitely going to run a rapid fire SharpHound. You can do some different configuration switches to make it a little quieter, but in general, we'll run SharpHound. And it'll collect its data. It's pretty fast. So you can generally collect the data within maybe 10 minutes or less. It's doing that many queries. It's really hitting Active Directory pretty hard. And in terms of, it's not going to cause any impact, but it's very noisy from a defensive perspective. So if your client does not detect that you ran #, that is a problem, right? That would be, a finding that they don't have effective controls for monitoring that sort of attacker activity. But long story short, is you get your Bloodhound, your #, data, you pull it over to Bloodhound, and then, presented with this tons of paths to go down. Now, what I like to do with Bloodhound data, we've collected it. Generally, that's going to include sessions. Doesn't have to include sessions, but that is a really important aspect for post-exploitation because generally speaking, when you're going through Active Directory, you're trying to bounce around the network and landing on a computer that has an interesting session with additional privileges is definitely a huge part of that. But one of the first things that I'll want to do is I'll get a list of groups and descriptions, users and descriptions, computers and their descriptions, and I'll map domain trust. So basically, the first step is for me to understand the domain. In Active Directory, the three main things I look at are groups, users, and computers. And then those different objects have a myriad of attributes you can look at. Descriptions is one of them, right? But for users, you might want to look at last time they changed their password. You can see all that in Active Directory. You can see maybe the home directory. You can maybe see when the user was created. There's just so many things that you can see based on the attributes. But some quick ones are what I like are just the name and the description. So the name of the group and the description, the name of the user and the description, and so on and so forth. It gives you like a quick lay of the land on the environment. So I can say, oh, they've got these users. And again, there's probably going to be hundreds of groups and thousands of users, depending on the size of the network. But just go through there because you can learn some interesting things. Sometimes descriptions, you'll see notes from the administrators. I have seen passwords in descriptions before, which is crazy. It does happen. It's not that common, but it does happen. So just for me, it's getting a lay of the land. So once I have that understanding, the next thing I want to do is move into identifying what my current access can do. Generally speaking, you might be working with a compromised account or a testing account you set up for testing if you're doing white card. But you generally want to look at what you have some sort of access because you do need to be on the domain to run #. I should have prefaced that. So this isn't something you could run from the internet necessarily unless you're going in through O365 and going to Azure and doing a different method. But in general speaking, you're going to be on the network connected to the domain. You're going to run # from a standard user. You don't necessarily need special privileges. The higher privileges you have, you might get more enriched session data. But if you have a standard user you've compromised or set up for testing, you can run your #, and you want to see what can this person do. So what I'm going to do is one quick way is just marking that user as owned and evaluating different attack points from that within the built-in queries in Bloodhound. There is also a lot of interesting ways to look at the groups that you're in initially and seeing the outbound control rights for that group. So in Bloodhound, if you select a node, Bloodhound pretty much calls everything like a node. So you could put your user in there, you could put like the everyone group or the domain users group. And basically from that point, look at outbound object control, which is interesting. First degree, you can look at the transitive object control and basically trying to figure out like what can this node do. For example, yesterday I found on a network that there was a path from the everyone group, which you might be wondering, that's like everyone, right? To domain admin because they had a permission to a computer, which is weird. I'm not really sure why they had this permission, but they did. And it had a permission to a computer, and that computer had a session on it that allowed them to, if you were admin on that computer, you could steal the session, and you could pivot from there to domain admin. The reason the computer, they had a session on there is they were using SCCM to push software, and they made that account for whatever reason domain admin. You probably want to limit permissions on that push account. And that makes a bunch of sessions on the network. So it was trying to push software out and making a bunch of sessions. So pretty much opening the door for, in this instance, for somebody to do a trivial priv-esque from any user account on the network by just looking at the outbound control rights and what effectively that user can do. The next thing I'll do is, and again, you might also be working, I should make note, you might also be working from like a past, say you did an assessment last year, and you have a hash dump from last year, you may want to see, okay, I have all of these systems. I want to see who hasn't changed their password since the last assessment. Maybe it was 365 days ago, 6 months ago or something. And there are some Bloodhound queries that you can run that are in Neo4j. And by the way, some of the queries are definitely better to run in Neo4j and not map in Bloodhound because it can be cumbersome and processor and memory intensive. So sometimes you may just want to run it from Neo4j. And this is one of the examples, like basically matching users who haven't changed their password in the last 365 days. It's a long query. And then I can extract that to a list, grep out from the hash dump and say, okay, based on this, I have access to, and this assessment, I had access to 270 users because they didn't change their passwords for these accounts last year. So then you basically may start with a ton of access. It really just depends. And Bloodhound can be that huge data source because, again, one of the attributes for the users is the PW last set attribute. So you can basically see, hey, user didn't change their password since 2 years ago. So the dump I have from last year is still valid. You have that hash, and you can pass the hash or do any sort of like attack with it. Maybe you've cracked it, and you have clear text representation. And when you're using real accounts, it becomes a lot harder to obviously, at least in my opinion, to detect the behavior than if you're trying to throw exploits around. And Crackhound, by the way, is another tool for Bloodhound that works really well. So if you have a bunch of accounts that you've previously compromised, say you have hundreds, and you want to import all those hundreds or 1,000 of accounts to Bloodhound, Crackhound can let you do that very quickly, so you aren't having to go in there and mark everyone as owned. Because Bloodhound has this general concept that when you own an object, a computer, or a user kind of thing, you can mark it as owned and then do a bunch of built-in queries based on that point saying, hey, try to find me domain admin paths from the owned principals. So there's a lot of built-in queries that take the concept of owned, meaning that you have access to that object or that node, and then what can you do from that point? So it's definitely good to mark who you have. And then the next thing I'll do from there is then try to identify some quick wins. And I'm walking through my methodology. Part of it's science, part of it's art. But again, what I'm doing is, I mentioned already before, what can the everyone or domain users group do? Can they reach any high value targets? Again, that's built into Bloodhound. Keep an eye on that. When you click on a node, there's like a reachable high value targets. That can be nice, quick, and easy. If you see that there, click it, draw the graph, and kind of see and try to understand what it is. I should note here, when you do the graph, Bloodhound can represent really big graphs sometimes that are like almost intense to see. You can't even see. There's so many things drawn that all these a bunch of lines. Zoom in and definitely try to understand where those are all mapping. It can be challenging, but as you do it, you're going to get better. And it does a great job being very intuitive. So if you're not sure what a particular permission means when they start to draw these on the graph, you can right click it and do the help, and it tells you just verbose information about that. So you can really learn Active Directory and abuse just by clicking around in Bloodhound and right clicking for help. Really tremendous job they've done at, putting in some help information into Bloodhound. So just don't, it may look crazy. Maybe you don't know what this permission set necessarily means. You can click on it and find out more information. The next thing I like to do, sorry, if you want to jump on a question.
No, it's fine. It's fine, my friend. Carry on, bro. Carry on. I'll let you
Okay, yeah, so the next thing I like to do is look at who's a domain admin. So from here, I'll just check to see who's domain admin. You want to keep an eye on nested groups. Sometimes this one assessment I had, they had basically like software engineers were domain admins. The software engineer group was also nested in domain admins. I've seen situations where they had third-party staff that effectively had a path to domain admin, which we would talk about later. But again, you want to look at who's domain admin. Software engineers being domain admin probably is a little bit too verbose of a permission. You probably don't need every software engineer to have full domain admin control. So you might want to make note of that in your report or look to abuse it further as you go through the network. The next thing you want to do is look at the transitive. I like to look at the transitive inbound control rights for the domain admin group. So there's this concept that we looked at the outbound control rights. So you have, all right, I'm in the everyone group, I'm in the domain users group. I want to look at what can they do. You're focusing on you go on the node info, scroll all the way down to the outbound. That's basically saying permissions that can get what you can do with these permissions. Where can you go? The inbound is the inverse of that. It's really nice. So you can have an ending point. I want to get to domain admins. Who can effectively touch domain admins? So you can go to the node info, inbound control rights, and look at those rights, the transitive object controllers, and basically say who can effectively get to domain admin. And it will show you paths to get to that point from a permission abuse. And it'll give you an idea of on this assessment this past week, I've seen this in the last two, help desk and support staff were able to get to domain admin group. Now, they obviously shouldn't have been. Like, that was a permission set that they could actually get to. through exploitation, but they didn't want that. They didn't want that permission set to be there, right? They clearly weren't added to the domain admin group, but if you got anybody in the support desk, you could become domain admin. The next thing I'll look for is who can DC sync. And that can be, again, another high privilege you want to get to. You can find Kerberoastable users. And this last point here, there's a lot of different things, but I'll just end it here because we could go on for hours talking about Active Directory and Bloodhound. But one of the things I also like to do in the environment is look at who has the highest amount of access in the environment. A lot of times we assume that's domain admin. We've heard me talk about that a lot, right? Because they have a lot of rights. Enterprise admins have a lot of rights. But sometimes a group can be assigned a ton of rights that isn't a domain admin. Maybe they even have more rights. So what you can do in Bloodhound, it's a heavy query, and I do this in Neo4j, is you can run basically a query that gives you the top 50 nodes that have the most outbound transitive control in the domain. So it'll list like the users and groups that have the most control rights in the domain. And then you can see like, oh, you're probably going to see your domain admins in there, but you might also see, why is Carol from accounting in there? That's weird. Why does she have about the same rights as somebody in the domain admins group? And you can try to investigate and drill into why does this account have so many rights? And that might actually be the interesting account to get to. She may have a very much lower threshold to try to exploit and take advantage of compared to getting into a domain admin group in that data set.
Yeah, Andrew, thanks, mate. And please don't apologize. Like, there's like years and years and years of knowledge and experience there that's all packed into a 12, 15-minute soundbite. So thanks, mate. And there's a few things I just want to get into. So I want to ask you, you mentioned the queries seem quite instrumental into making the most of exploiting an AD. I get what you're doing with Bloodhound and Sharphound. You're using a tool to basically save yourself boatloads of time, but it's in exchange for not remaining stealthy. There's a few things I want to mention. So you tell me, but I'm guessing time management is going to be quite a factor because you use words like they've really evolved, they're on some legacy systems, it's a rat's nest. So it seems to me like when you get in there, there is so many different places you can go. And then you started to, I think the exact phrase you used was quick wins. And when as soon as you said that, I thought, if you don't know what you're doing here, I could imagine just going down a rabbit hole, and especially in a commercial environment, like for weeks and weeks, probably. Yeah. So my question is, when it comes to time management, any tips for the listeners? And also, is there any way to utilize and take the time gains that the likes of Sharphound and Bloodhound are bringing to the table? And is there like you talked about doing LDAP queries. I'm presuming that's manually, so that's less noisy and stuff like that. Is there like a halfway house where we can be less noisy, still save boatloads of time, and still be fairly stealthy? Or am I in dreamland?
Not necessarily. So when we do red team engagements, we're going to use a tool. Well, we'll use a built-in tool to run this, but effectively it's doing LDAP queries. And that you could effectively ask Active Directory whatever you want from LDAP queries. Now, what I would say is this is going to increase stealth, right? And it's going to, I don't necessarily know it's going to save you time. I mean, it can save you time because you're gathering a bunch of data, but it's going to be harder. So you're going to have to know a little more. Bloodhound and Sharphound have a lot done for you already, so you can click around and you don't really need to know the query. You can just click the buttons it's set up for you. Obviously, knowing the query and how to query Neo4j are very strong. But so you could use DS Query or some other like LDAP searching tool. We might run it through like a BOF from Cobalt Strike. So it's executing in memory and it's doing a query to Active Directory. And we may just start out with get the list of groups and descriptions, user descriptions, and computers descriptions, right? I may build that out myself and learn a little more about the environment versus trying to gather the full thing with Sharphound. We also have modified Sharphound and built our own version that does things a little slower. And then there are some switches in Sharphound that you can run to slow it down. Not asking for session data can help drastically at limiting the noise. So they do have some built-in features to the actual tool, some switches. And then you can modify the code to slow things down, modify what it's doing, or you could use a different tool that's just doing LDAP queries. But again, when you do that last part, it raises the bar and sort of the knowledge required because you obviously have to know what to ask LDAP and how to do the query. And you're not just, the logic isn't built into the tool like it is with Sharphound.
Yeah, cool, mate. Okay, so you're producing your own scripts, you're modifying the tools. So there is like a nice, you're not just going, for anyone listening, you're not just going full hog on the tools. You're still doing some of your own scripts. You're obviously modification. BreakPoint Labs have built their own version. So you're really having that almost like a blended approach to it to optimize your time and utilize the tools as well.
Yeah, and it depends. Some engagements we will just use the regular Sharpound. Sometimes I want to know if I would say most pen test engagements we just use the Sharpound, and if it gets caught, then we'll slow it down. We'll see if it gets caught because we wanted to test their defenses with that too. Red team wise, we won't probably touch Sharpound until later in the engagement when we're either trying to get caught or we really don't think we're going to get caught. So we're like, all right, we can just run Sharpound data. But it's a very calculated decision because obviously you are raising alarm bells. And if they have a decent monitoring in place, EDRs and things to track that, then you're going to light things up like a Christmas tree. But a lot of it, some environments don't have that. But again, with red teaming, we start out slow and build up fast. With pen testing, we tend to start out fast for efficiency purposes and then maybe slow down to see if they catch the slow stuff later. It's almost flipped on its head in terms of speed.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Another thing, Andrew, it sounds to me like getting these queries right. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds to me like it's quite important to get good at this and really develop and refine a skill set around this. Is there any way to get better at knowing what queries to do? Any advice for listeners if they're thinking, "Yeah, I'm pretty good, but I could be better"? Any points there?
Yeah, there's a lot of people that have put some really good queries online already, and that's how I learned is just building off of what they've done. There's a lot of different people that have done it on GitHub, and I can send you some links, some good ones. And a lot of people have basically built custom queries. So Bloodhound has this way that you can add queries to the GUI interface, custom queries.json. They've built it into the tool that you can basically take somebody's custom queries and add it to your configuration so that when you turn your Bloodhound on, it's got all these buttons there. Now, one of the options in Bloodhound, which is nice, is the ability to see the query that the button you click is running. And I would suggest that. So you have to enable what's it called here? Let me see. You enable the query debug mode. So if you click that option in the settings, now any query you do, you can click on the bottom middle. They'll say like raw query. And you can click that and actually see the Neo4j query that your button click did. So you can start to reverse engineer and learn the query language by starting to experiment with other people's queries that they put out online, and then also to look at the queries as you're clicking on the button and try to understand them in your head. Oh, I see what it's doing. Match this, return this, and you'll start to build it out. But I'd say start using the GUI and looking at the queries, and then maybe give yourself a little challenge to make a simple query. For example, might be match a user that has the admin count equals true. Right, and that is in Active Directory. That's another one of those user attributes. If admin count is turned to 1 or true, they have some administrative control over something in the domain. So sometimes you'll want to limit. I just want to focus on accounts that have admin to something, and you can print out a list of all the admin counts that are equal true, and then you can append to that saying, all right, now show me the admin count equals true where they haven't changed their password in 5 years or 10 years. Because let me tell you, 10 years ago, the password policy and people even just making passwords was a lot worse. And you're going to find that. If you do a query on networks, admin count equals 1, haven't changed their password in 10 years, you're going to find it. I'd be surprised if you didn't. And that might be good accounts to look into and start to target. But those simple queries, if you challenge yourself to do that in the Neo4j interface, you'll start to understand it, and it becomes a lot more powerful of a tool for you.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, mate. So you're looking for password changes. Anything that's been a long time ago. Just to summarise for everyone, anything that's been ages. Yeah, passwords back in the day. Even my own passwords back in the day were awful. Obviously not anymore, but yeah, it's how it was. Also, so you're basically looking at you're making sure the least privileges rule has basically been applied across the board, and anywhere it hasn't, you're going to look to exploit it. You've said anything else that leads to the domain admin. When you said earlier, Andrew, about someone can have more privileges than an admin. Yeah. By the way, for anyone listening, you're serious about enhancing your ability to exploit and hack ADs, I would suggest taking notes, and I'd probably suggest listening to this 2 or 3 times over because there's some good stuff here. And Andrew, thank you. I can see Andrew talking, by the way, so I can see how you're clearly knowledgeable and passionate. So and know a lot. But So my next question basically is, can you tell me more about what you said about how someone that's not domain admin can have more privilege as someone that is?
Yeah, so that you're going to find that the permission set, and they often have very similar permissions or close to it, but you're going to find the permission set in Active Directory is going to be assigned by just a myriad of things. Group ownership, and some places go pretty far nowadays to lock down domain admins to try to put them just to their job role, right? Like you talked about, their job role is to maybe administer these servers. Maybe that's all they can log into, and they're trying to lock down the domain admin, what they can do on the network. And they also will monitor that usage as well a lot more closely too. So the domain admins, it can get you access, but it isn't always the best way or the most stealthy way. You might be able to find the ability to achieve your mission objectives by achieving a different level of access, maybe a system engineer or Carol from accounting. For whatever reason, Carol's got a ton of permissions. I don't know why. So what I'll do is run a Neo4j query, run a query in Neo4j that will return the top 50 outbound control rights based on transitive object control for the domain. So what it's basically doing is saying, hey, take all the objects that I know about, the computers, users, groups, and return to me how many things they can touch, how many things they can do. And you'll say this domain admin can touch 2,000 things, 7,000 things, whatever it is, right? And you might see Carol from accounting can touch 6 or 8 or 9, some number around that, but it's weird, right? It's not so interesting that the domain admin can touch a lot of stuff because that's expected, but it is weird that this other account that's not a DA can touch a bunch of stuff. So ask yourself why. Click on that user and then drill into, is this assigned from a group membership? And you might find that, oh, okay, this weird software engineering or system engineering group has a ton of permissions and she's in this, and all the DAs aren't in that group, right? So it might just be that it's a group membership delegated permission issue that they've tried to limit the domain admins, but because they know that's what people target, but they didn't think to limit the systems engineers or the whatever group it is, and they have a ton of rights still. So that's why and also you might find a ton of abuse paths to this random group and limited to the domain admin group, right? So you don't want to, if your goal when you're exploiting Active Directory is to get to access, you don't want to work off the false assumption that getting to domain admin, enterprise admin is the way to get the keys to the castle. It might be, but you can query Bloodhound. And again, I didn't make this query. This is a query I found from somebody's GitHub. I forget the person's name, but I'll link you all a lot of some good resources that one of them having this query in it. But it'll tell you like who could touch the most stuff and start there. And you might find that, oh, this person in this weird organization, this weird group has a ton of access. And let me try to focus on getting to that person. And again, you would click on that person, say Carol from accounting in this example. And then your next question is, I know she can do a lot of stuff because we looked at the outbound control rights. I know that she can touch a bunch of stuff. My next thing is, what can touch Carol? And Bloodhound lets you do that too. So you just switch yourself. You've been focusing on this outbound stuff. Now look at the inbound stuff. And now you can see all the paths to get to Carol. And you might find there's an interesting path to get to Carol, and you can try to exploit it. And a lot of people that use Bloodhound initially, when you first get started in Bloodhound, I know I was the culprit of this for a long time, is you focus your searches on just what you've owned, right? So I've got this account. Let me see what I can do with it. And you don't look at the full domain to see where are there permission abuse issues. You're more focused on, I've got this account, this access, where can I go? But there's a lot of ways to look the other way to say, all right, where's the interesting spots on the network? And then let me look up and down from those spots. And you can find some interesting branches to jump through. So you might be like, oh, I need to get to this group. And then I can jump to Carol. And then on Carol, I can access this server. And then I can take over the whole network. So you basically can, the goal shouldn't be just to look at who you've owned, but also who you want to own. And then that question is best answered by looking at who has the most interesting permissions. And you can do that by looking at who has the most outbound control rights.
Thank you, mate. This is good. Andrew, do you know, there's a French-Canadian guy I know who's a red teamer, and he said to me once, he was like, he reads word for word the GitHub manual on Bloodhound, and I can see how that is. He was saying it's been game-changing for for him getting good at
Yeah.
exploiting ADs. And it makes sense because what you're basically saying is, I can relate it to loads of things in life, is leave no stone unturned, make sure you know about everything. Don't just use the tool and go, yeah, that seems great. It's actually reverse engineering the tool, completely understanding it, looking at things from lots of different angles. But yeah, no, that's good, mate. Is there anything, we've talked loads on AD and it's been really good. Is there anything
and
else?
I think every other topic's going to be shorter. AD is just the one that tends to get me going the most. And I had to hold back. I had more to say, but I was like, I probably, if I keep going here, and I don't think the scary thing is, maybe the good thing and the inspiring thing is, I don't think I've mastered it. I feel like I've just scratched the surface, right? So there's so much more to learn, and I'm still digging into it every day. But there's just a wealth of knowledge there. The GitHub page is a lot of resources. The community itself people have done a lot of good work that you can learn from. So back to one of your questions, you don't have to be starting from scratch. You can definitely start from a lot of people's research that they've done. That's what I did and built it up over time. But yeah, so I think this is probably one of my most fun parts of my job, is being able to look through Active Directory. I guess that makes me a nerd. I don't know, but it is a ton of fun. And it's also nice because when you're looking through Bloodhound and Active stuff like this, it's passive analysis. So you're not breaking anything by doing Bloodhound queries, other than maybe your own Kali VM or something, because some of the queries can dork the VM. So because they're so intensive, but you're not going to break the network. So it's like a fun place. So if you're new to security, talk to your pen tester, red team, and they can give you maybe they can share with you some Bloodhound data, and you can put it in your Bloodhound, and you can do analysis safely. It's not you're pushing buttons doing queries. It's nothing's going from there. It's all staying local, and you're just doing passive analysis. So it's a ton of fun. It's a good learning tool for new people as well, for that reason, because you're not breaking stuff.
Yeah, Andrew, I'm probably going to have to give you like a size of a company, but if the company say, I don't know, 1,000 users, how long should it take to effectively exploit the AD and do a good pen test on that, would you say?
Oh, so like a full pen test of the environment?
Yeah.
Or yeah. So generally speaking, 1,000 users, I mean, we usually do that in about 2 to 3 weeks, and then a week reporting. Maybe more like 2 weeks and then a week reporting. There might be like a week planning with a couple calls, and 2 weeks active testing, and then a week reporting. That's probably like the fast pen test that I can think, because 1,000 users isn't a lot. In terms of the Active Directory portion of that, it might be a couple days, might be like 2 days or so of doing analysis and then planning the attack. And a lot of that really depends on what kind of defenses they have. Do they have EDR we have to bypass? That could make things a lot harder. They usually do. You might, and depending on what the EDR is, you might have to spend time to develop code to get around that, or ways to get around that. We just did CrowdStrike on this pass assessment, and there was some, fancy way to get around it with loading a DLL in memory, and we didn't have to do a lot of custom coding. So that was nice, but that doesn't always work. Sometimes I have to go to one of my developers and say, "Can you make me a bypass for CrowdStrike?" And that might be a 1 or 2 day thing. So it really does depend. It's very different for every environment. We generally collect like the information about their controls ahead of time so we can plan that. But I would say 2 weeks for active testing, maybe a few days for analysis on Active Directory should do you for a network of about 1,000 users.
Yeah. Mate, I can see why you love it, because I do genuinely get excited just talking about it. So I'm not even doing it. Do you know what I mean? So talking about it's fun. Doing it must be really fun.
Yeah, and I promise that we spent, in terms of time management here, a lot of this Active Directory. So I promise the other ways are very quick. This is the one that's detailed.
No, but honestly, it's good because I speak to some of the listeners, like when I'm meeting new candidates and stuff like that, and like a lot of them have listened to the podcast before I've even met them, and some people like the leadership stuff, some people like the technical stuff. So if we spend ages on one topic, I see it as a positive, because people listening can just go to this bit and go, right, first half an hour, bang, AD. I think it's good. I think it's nice for them.
Yep. And again, I'll share the links that I have that I've pulled together that are good after this. You can put them in the notes for those users that are listeners that are wanting to look into Bloodhound a little further. I would just say it's a lot easier than it looks. You can pull up a map and it looks really scary, but once you start to just slow it down and look at the relationships and start to build your knowledge on those, it becomes easier as you go, and things start to, you'll even see that permissions are relative in the network, where it's okay. You can look at the outbound control rights for one group. It's similar to the other group. You already see the number. It'll say like outbound control rights 513. I'll know, okay, I know what that graph looks like. I already looked at it. So you can things get faster over time, and it'll build up. And it's one of the things that actually probably the easiest thing to learn in red teaming, I'd say, is this. I think this is the hard stuff. This is not the hard stuff. in my
Yeah,
opinion.
no, cool. I think it's a massive area of interest. I know, again, from speaking to people, it's something that a lot of people like to talk about and are trying to improve in. Someone was telling me iRedTeam.com. I posted about it literally last night because he was telling me
Yeah.
that he uses that a lot. Would you say that's a pretty good resource?
Yeah, they are. iRead.team. Yeah, they are. They definitely are.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, cool. That's it. We'll get everything in the show notes. But right, mate, AD topic for this episode done. So Kerber roasting, Kerber roast. Feel free to add bits and bobs in. There's no strict rule, but Kerber roasting attacks. What trusted hacking methodologies do you have at BreakPoint Labs? You can share with us.
Yeah, Kerber roasting attack maybe extends out of that Active Directory. It's one of the queries you could run from Bloodhound. But in a Microsoft Active Directory environment, you have the idea of service accounts, and they have this thing that gets basically an SPN record that gets set in the domain, and that basically sets it up as a service, be used as a service account. So you can basically query Bloodhound and get a list of the Kerber roastable users. And those are definitely good ones to look into because you can grab a TGS ticket for them. This is just like how Active Directory works. It's like by the manual. It's not like something that they're going to fix necessarily. So you can get the TGS for that account. And again, Kerberos and Active Directory, they all work with this idea of these tickets. You get these tickets, you can go access stuff. And the ticket granting ticket, TGS, is encrypted with the service account's password generally. Then you can effectively brute force that offline. Now, if it's a complex password, it can be challenging. It depends on the algorithm used. It can be challenging, but we do get a lot of wins for that generally. Usually there is a handful. Most networks I get on, there's probably anywhere from 10 to 30 accounts I can Kerberos. And we may crack even 10% of those. But those accounts, these are service accounts, right? They generally have interesting access. They're not like a standard user account. They can be a standard user account in addition, but that's usually a configuration issue. Like they might be assigned to Bob in finance, but that would be weird. And that would be something I'd report on. But in any event, you can crack their hash from the ticket and then effectively have that account and then go figure out what you can do for that as a service account. Generally speaking, you can get to some server and then you have a look for where admins that have logged in or are logging in to that server, and you can steal their session and kind of pivot their access. So there's a lot of different attack paths you can do from that. Rubius is a good tool to use for doing. There's a ton of ways to do Kerberos attacks. We like Rubius. There's a myriad of tools that can do it. And again, the idea is you're targeting the accounts that have SPN records set, and then you're trying to crack the hash offline is high level of it.
Cool, man. And the tooling for this, GitHub best place, would you say?
Yep. The Ghost Pack suite is a suite by, I think, the same folks that do the Bloodhound stuff. So they do, obviously, a lot of the same developers, and Ruby is one of the tools within that, and it's another really good tool. But there's a ton of tools out there. So pick your fancy. We like Rubius because we can do it via execute assembly, or we can do it through other means within Cobalt Strike that aren't as required us to have command line access in the box. Because our C2, we generally do is some modified version of Cobalt Strike. And depending, you might not be able to run commands in the box. You might have to, without flagging EDR, you might have to do stuff via execute assembly or some other techniques. So we like some of the stuff written in C# because it provides extra flexibility.
I'm seeing like a C#, Rust, Golang, like a lot of the malware for the MGM was written in Rust, wasn't it? Rust seems to be, I think it's so fast, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm not too keen on it myself, and I know neither my developers, but it is one of those things. I think people are looking for things to do fast and things to do that are non-standard, maybe to evade detection. So if you're using a different language, it might have different artifacts that EDR isn't as keen on, and you might be able to avoid detection. But I'm not the best at tracking that. My developer is, and I usually just leverage his skill set to achieve our malware. It's not me that's writing it, that's for sure.
Yeah, cool. Listen, C#'s pretty low level, mate, isn't it?
Yeah, and again, I do a little bit, but not that's his. That's his area, Luke. But yeah, at least getting Kerberos, that's a quick win usually in a network. If you get on there, that's usually like the quick and dirty way to get some access or highlight some configuration issue.
Cool. All right, mate. Network shares when they're weak, default passwords, reusing, relay attacks, weak web controls. Can you talk me through and break down for the listeners what goes on here at BreakPoint Labs and really get across what the listeners could learn from what you guys are doing in relation to that.
Yeah, I think so this will go through these a little faster because they're just not quite as intense. But network shares, that tends to be an area of huge opportunity as the attacker. We'll generally run a tool called Snaffler, and it takes a bit to run. You can point it at shares, or you can just let it run across the domain. If you let it run across the domain, it may never finish. It may just run indefinitely, because what it's trying to do is go to every share and then look at the contents of the files and basically extract what things are interesting. Here's a password. Here's this interesting document because it had this string. And it gives you just tremendous, the report it gives you is tremendous. It's tons of valuable stuff, and you can pull out so many wins. This one of the wins we had recently was a network we were on. They had switched their disaster recovery solution, and the old setup, they basically fully opened up the old setup to transfer to the new setup, and they never closed off the old setup. Their disaster and recovery solution was fully open to anyone in the everyone group. So we were able to just quickly see that with Snaffler and get a ton of cool data, key pass files, all sorts of interesting PII and things that show value for the report. So yeah, network shares are a ton of value, and they're low level of effort to compromise them. They can lead to detection, especially when you're doing Snaffler across the network. You might have what's called an ECAR file in the network on a share. These are files used to test Active Directory or test antivirus software. And if you touch it, it's like an on access, like AV freaks out, right? Because it's designed to freak out with that file to test it, to make sure AV is working. Okay, the ECAR file triggered. If you touch it with Snaffler, it's going to freak the AV out and call some alerts on you. So you might want to avoid that file, and you can configure Snaffler. Look into it. It's not too complicated. That's just one way to automate share analysis. There are a ton of tools there though for SMB map and others, but Snaffler is solid. There's also a Snaffler for SharePoint too. I forget the name of it offhand. There's basically a Snaffler type solution for SharePoint, because sometimes the shares aren't on the network or on the SMB share, they're in SharePoint. So you can run that as well. Weak passwords is another one of those areas. And pretty much I've never been on a network that didn't have weak passwords. They're always there. They've been there in all of my years of hacking, and I don't think it will ever go away, because it's that human element. Even on two-factor networks, there's still accounts that have bad passwords that have single factor. It always is the case. It's never not been in all of my tests I've ever done over the years. So it's a huge area. It's a huge thing. So still passwords that are winter 2023, winter 2022, bang, company name, year and bang, all these things still work. You might find on the network share for Snaffler, you might Snaffle, find a help desk article that says your default password is this, log in and change your password. I bet you that password is reused across the network. You want to use what's called an 80 soft slow brute forcing attack. If you're doing this, you can't in Active Directory generally just blast password guesses. You're going to lock accounts out. So what we'll generally do is do one password guess an hour after we analyze the password policy for the domain. And we may not do every single account. The idea there is that you want to try to guess passwords and not lock accounts out. Generally speaking, if you try one password guess every hour for a week, you're generally going to reset the counter, because it's usually, and you can query this in the domain, so it's different for every environment. But it's generally something like 3 to 5 password attempts within 30 minutes locks the account for 15 minutes. We try to stay far below that radar and just do one an hour. And you can generally get through a lot of passwords that way over the course of a week. And then I'll generally get into about 50 accounts that way, give or take. And those accounts, again, sometimes we've gotten domain admin that way. It's as silly as it is. We've gotten full access to the domain that way. And it just continues to be the case. So I've, really never not seen that successful. And I think one of the last ones you may have mentioned, and that was weak web controls. Web is an area that's hard for people on the outside of their network. They usually are doing a pretty good job securing it, not always, but they generally are. On the inside of the network, I think it's the inverse. People are pretty much never looking at web on the inside, and they maybe have the false assumption their network vulnerability scanner is telling them all their vulns. And Nessus network vulnerability scanners are not good at web. They're not designed for that. They have some maybe web plugins, but they're not going to find the stuff that really, honestly, it's going to miss a lot of problems. We were on a network recently where they had Jenkins servers, which lets them manage and deploy code. And in that environment, there was a configuration in Jenkins that everyone can do everything. That's actually a button in Jenkins. Everyone can do everything. It's literally a security setup in Jenkins. And that was set up. Everyone can do everything. We got on there, didn't need any creds, and Nessus could have scanned this, and I don't think it would have found that. Maybe it would. We don't really use Nessus, but I don't think it would have found this. But I could be wrong. In any event, we got on there, and it wouldn't have done all this part. So then we could manage the users. In Jenkins, you can see the users that are there. You can view source, and you can actually see the password representation, which is encrypted value in source code. You can copy that out, and then you can decrypt it from the script console in Jenkins. So you can go over to the Jenkins script console and you can decrypt it in there. And it's salted and stuff, but so it's specific to that server, but you can use the server to decrypt the password on the server. And one of those accounts had a path to domain admins. We basically went from weak web control to abusing the app to decrypt the password and then taking that credential set and then taking over the network. Weak web controls, you think they aren't a big deal. And speaking with our customer, that was, one of the ones they were trying to get fixed for a long time. It's just one of those things that it wasn't showing up in their vuln scan results. So it wasn't a priority. And I think internal networks tend to have this focus of they want to take care of the things that are red and purple and saying critical and high. And if it isn't showing up in that list, then it's never going to get fixed. And this is probably sat on the network for a decade.
I think it's because you've got so much knowledge around linking things together. Because if you didn't have the deep knowledge, you'd look at something on its own and go, that's fine. And that's probably what's happening, isn't it?
I should tell you that I didn't know anything about Jenkins before this assessment. Part of it is just like being curious and like trying to figure it out. And I think it was me and a colleague of mine that I work with that were like putting it together. And actually she did a lot of the heavy lifting. And I probably lifted a small part of that problem and she did most liftings. Kudos to Alex on that one. But we don't generally know, like I wasn't a past developer, so I have limited knowledge on the things I know when I go into it. But I think just being like thinking creatively and how you could abuse that, whatever you're dealing with, that's probably the most biggest thing for web is like, how can you ask yourself, how can you abuse this feature that the web application is giving you? And if you can ask yourself that question and keep asking yourself that question, you can go pretty far in web hacking. Because a lot of times it is just abusing a feature. It's not just necessarily finding some super technical control.
Yeah, that goes back to hacker mindset, Andrew, doesn't it? It's looking at it in the right way and really trying to manipulate it in the most nicest possible way, but in the most malicious way possible. What could I really do if I link this and link that? But yeah, cool, mate. Okay, buddy. Social engineering, it's topical at the minute. Obviously, MGM, hacks, just unbelievable how they got in.
Yeah.
Mental, wasn't it?
It's crazy. And the amount of money that can be involved in that, it's amazing. And it's scary. That's for sure. Yep. The human element.
Andrew, just a quick one. So you're going back to the hacker mindset. So I'm starting to organize virtual roundtable events whereby like a company in New York, I know they've got some juniors on the team who technically are getting really good, but they're struggling to develop that hacker mindset. You've clearly got it. What I'm doing with these particular guys and girls in New York is we're organizing, we're leveraging my network to organize them meeting up with some really experienced guys I know that are going to mentor the juniors for half a day or something like that on developing hacker mindset. It's so important. I can hear from what you're saying. It's so important linking these things together. Obviously, there's a massive knowledge and experience element, but any kind of tips around developing and refining that mindset at all?
Yeah, so I think when you talk about the mindset, I look at that like the science and the art of it. So the science of it is, here's this methodology, follow these steps 1 to 10. But the art of it all is like thinking through that, the different branches and where to go. And you had mentioned previously, there's oftentimes millions of places to go. There's endless, and knowing where to go can be challenging. But I think part of it is having a mentor is a great idea. And then other than that is because they can guide you into challenges. You have to get your hands dirty. So I definitely think you have to do the work. You have to, whether it be in a lab or be a part of shadowing, to see and learn, because you're going to start to build your own art. You can study the science, but to build the art, you have to do, in my opinion. And it's like trying to say you want to become a great painter and you're going to go to school and just read about how to paint, but you're never going to grab the brush and do the stroke. Until you do that, you're probably never going to be a great painter, right? I think it's fairly obvious, but I think in this field especially, and even with the hacking mindset, right? So even with thinking about, so for example, some of the social engineering things that we'll do is I'll get access to a certain box and I'll try to get a help desk person to log into that box. I'm not just trying to get the help desk to say, hey, let me reset your password. I'm combining it with, I have access to this resource. Let me try to get them to that resource and then steal their credentials. And maybe if it's allowed within ROE, maybe you break something on that box that the help desk then has to come fix. Again, if it's allowed within your rules of engagement, and they come over and fix it, and you steal their access when they fix it, and you go on to somewhere else. So there's a lot of interesting ways to do the social engineering side of it. And I think seeing it, being a part of it, is probably how you build that mindset. And then and solving some challenges, like the OSCP course is really good, that I think you walk out of that. If you're successful in that, I think you've got a pretty good start at a hacker mindset.
Yeah, no, cool, mate. Thank you, buddy. Yeah, definitely. I really like that, by the way, about that one where you get access to an environment. So you're not even asking them for their you're not asking them for their credentials or anything like that. You're getting them just to log in, and then bang, you're sorted.
Yeah, but you have to create a demand that you make them do what you want them to do. So what's the demand? The demand could be, it depends on who you're targeting. If you're targeting the users, you might make a demand for the password reset. If you're targeting the help desk, maybe you're trying to pretend to be a user and get your credentials reset. Or can you fix my box? I've had it to where I've pegged the CPU on a box on purpose. So the person came over, was running slow. Why is it running slow? Let me look. He's pulling a task manager all along the lines. I'm stealing their credentials. And oh, by the way, I killed the process. The box is working again. He's, oh, it seems to be working better now. Okay, cool. And these help desk folks they've got a rapid fire respond to these emergencies. They're in and out, and now I'm them, right? So now I've pivoted from user to help desk, and generally speaking, you have a lot more access then, and then you can continue your escalation to achieve mission objectives.
Cool, mate. 9-page paper that you've recently produced. How do we access it? How will it help the listeners?
Yeah, so it's going to get published. We just had our website rebuilt this week, and they're in the process of publishing that paper to the site. So it'll be downloadable soon, hopefully within about a week. Maybe by the time this pod is live, it'll be downloadable. I can definitely talk to the folks that are publishing it to try to put a bug in their ear. And then we'll try to they've made it higher level than I want it to be. So there might be some technical details that aren't in there. But I'll try to supply you with some links as well following this so you can include them in the show notes. Because one of my biggest things, I really try to push people into trying Bloodhound and analyzing Active Directory, both on the red and the blue side. So if they take anything from this talk, it's let me go play with that. It's because if you're a defender, if you're somebody that manages servers or whatever on the network, and you have an understanding of Active Directory and for your environment, it's going to be such an amazing tool for you. That's going to be the biggest area to focus on from that we covered. And we did spend a lot of time on it. So
do you know what we'll do? Even if it doesn't marry up with the release of this, just ping me. And if you're going to post about it, I'll post about it as well. And I'll get people on the team, my team, to post about it. So we'll get everyone to see it like that as well. But then once it's out, we'll put it in the show notes. So yeah. Cool.
Yeah, it'll pretty much lay out the things we covered here, just higher level. So if they want the Active Directory deep dive, they'll have to reverse to the first 30 minutes or so of this talk.
Yeah. Mate, and by the way, look, we're doing fine for time. Look, we normally go way over. We're not even at an hour yet. I was expecting to go well over an hour.
Yeah, that's good. I'm a talker, and generally speaking, when I'm engaging, whether it be a speaking event or podcast or whatever, that's always in the back of my mind is Andrew, shut up. Talk too much.
Honestly, it's fine. If you're a talker and you're on a podcast with a recruiter, that's a lethal combination because recruiters like to talk as well. So never mind. Okay, mate. I just want to cover your unique way of managing remotely. As a reminder for the listeners, your retention rate is 100% retention rate, which is fantastic. Can you just tell us a little bit about that, mate, and how it might help other managers listening or other team leaders listening or even other business owners listening?
Yeah, so one of the things and I have this mentality that I'll take the trash out too. Whatever I want, I'll also extend that right to my engineers. So if I want to work remotely, which I do, all my engineers get to work remotely, that kind of thing. And I still take the trash out with them. I'm still alongside them doing the hacking. And I think, or whatever the job is, I think that's pretty important to lead by example. So to be a leader that's in the mud, the thick of it, and then also try to consider what makes you happy and what are things that you like about your job. And don't just take that, as a company owner, I could do a lot of things. I could just not work. I could just go watch YouTube all day or do whatever. I don't have to do the projects. I do them because I like it. But also one of the reasons I do them is to maintain camaraderie with the team and respect from the team. So I would do it regardless. but because I love the work. But if I didn't, I think if you're a leader who's not doing the work and you don't know how to do the work and you're just that PM person that's just managing timelines, the odds of you having respect from your technical staff is pretty low. Realistically, they might respect you as a PM, but they're not going to respect you as a PM over much else. But I think what really builds the person that people want to follow and stick around with is somebody that might be the PM leader and also like getting in the weeds with them. You tend to find out more about your technical resources that way too, so you can understand like what makes them happy. You can set up opportunities for them. So like I had a guy that really wanted to be a developer. We didn't have a developer spot. I knew that because I was in the weeds with him, and we made a spot for him, and we got him in that. So instead of him leaving to find that, we created it in-house. So I think being close to the work, close to your engineers is really invaluable. Obviously, that's hard to do if you're Facebook size. There's levels of leadership at Facebook, I'm sure, that still get down to the weeds. So I think if you're a company owner, don't be afraid to keep your hands on the keyboard.
I think it's a cultural thing, mate. Like I say, if the culture's absolutely spot on, yes, it's probably harder to implement, but I don't think it's not doable. And just to echo that for everyone listening, it's so true. A lot of the calls I get from really good senior folks are, my manager doesn't know what I'm doing. My manager doesn't understand what we do. He's this, she's that. And that is how a lot of moves start. So it really does make sense, mate. Mate, last question, I promise, buddy. If I'm a pen tester and I want to sharpen up my blue team skills, I know I've been neglecting them because I've been too busy. It's Q4, PCI DSS is on. Q4 is always really hectic in offensive sec. I've been putting it off. How do I sharpen up my blue team skills? What's the best way?
Yeah, so blue team side, I think it's important to know whatever tool you're running, what it does on the wire. So you're running Bloodhound. What does that look like from a PCAP perspective? What does it look like from the query perspective? Understand everything that the keyboard, the things that you do, your attacker tactics, techniques, tools. What does that look like on the wire, the network, which tends to be a source of a lot of detection, but also maybe in the log side too. And that's a hard one to know, but you can maybe build your own AD lab, like with a couple of VMs, and run the tools, gather the data, and look at it. If you have the opportunity, working alongside a defender, so maybe your next pen test pitch to your management, or maybe you're in charge to make this call, pitch to them a purple team approach where you can say, hey, we want to define, let's do the pen test at the end of it. This is what we'll do. At the end of the pen test, we're all done. We take a couple days to run through our tools again, collectively, maybe screen share, and we get the logs from the team, right? So they send us the logs. So like that might be, if you're already on a pen test team, just suggest that. Say, hey, we're all done. Let us run SharpHound. Let us run some of our common tools. Tell the customer the timestamps when you're doing it, coordinate it, and then get the logs from them. And then you can see together and make it about, listen, the goal is that I want to help you get stronger, the defender. And when you do that, you get stronger as well. So like you'd be like, all right, so when we run SharpHound, it blows up these alerts. Now, are there ways to slow it down? Yeah, let's not grab session data this time. And let me see if it blows up alerts. Maybe it doesn't. So I think that's another good technique. So either make that lab environment or try to coordinate with the next pen test to have a little purple team approach at the end. It doesn't add a lot of time to kick the tools off, get the logs back. So it's not like a huge time sink.
Definitely, mate. And I really like the bit you mentioned there about how to approach it, because you were like, it's to help us both get stronger. It's to help you get stronger. And I think that's so important, because the minute we get this red and blue divide, it's just not good for overall security posture. So it's a good way to approach it, because it does make a difference just how you say these little things. People think it doesn't, but it does. It makes all the difference, mate, doesn't it?
Yeah, I haven't had anybody turn that down. Obviously, I'm not charging them for extra for it, but I've always just said, hey, let's do a little thing at the end where we're coordinating some logs back and forth. And the goal is to try to figure out if you have blind spots in your detection mechanisms. And then conversely, the benefit we get from that is we can maybe tune what we do better so we can avoid detection. So it's like mutually beneficial. I haven't had anybody deny that. So it's been something that they're usually they jump on board with it, and they're like pretty gung-ho about that exercise. And again, it's usually something we do for a few hours, and then we get the logs. It's not like a huge time sink.
Mate, I think it's I think it adds value to your service, and probably improves and enhances the relationship that you have with your clients even more as well, because you're doing above and beyond when you're at the end of a test.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it does add value. It's not a huge time sink. It's just a matter of kicking off a subset of things that you do on engagements at a controlled time where you're like, hey, it's Monday between 10 and 12, we're going to run our tools. and then getting the logs between 10 and 12.
Right, mate, wicked. I think we've about covered everything. All right, buddy. Mate, honestly, thank you. I think just to round this up for the listeners, years and years of real life experience. Andrew, thanks for sharing it with us, mate. And I would strongly suggest, thanks, mate. I would really suggest taking notes on this one. I would really suggest listening to certain parts of the episode, certainly more than once. And I think it will be a big help for the listeners. So, mate, thanks again. And I'm sure we'll speak soon, buddy.